Yeah. Correct, no?
Hare Krishna. We are very fortunate to have the association of His Grace Shubha Vilas Prabhu at ISKCON Vishal Nagar. I would just like to read a small introduction of his. His Grace Shubha Vilas Prabhu, he studied patent law after completing his engineering degree, but finally he chose the path of a spiritual seeker. He has received his PhD degree just last month. He wrote his thesis on leadership and managerial effectiveness from Valmiki Ramayana. In his 11 years of monkhood associated with Shri Radha Gopinath Temple, ISKCON Chowpatty, Mumbai, he has served in various leadership roles in congregational development as well as management. He heads ISKCON Goa, where the congregation has been on a steady growth curve under his leadership. He also heads Tulsi Books, a publishing house for spiritual books. Pioneer of Gita Champions League, GCL, now an international competition to promote Gita learning in schools. Dr. Shubha Vilas considers the whole world his home and works with individuals, youth, corporates, institutes, and governments around the world through exclusive workshops, seminars, training modules, and learning retreats. The focus of his work is the application of scriptural wisdom in day-to-day living, addressing the needs of everyone through thought-provoking seminars. He has delivered more than 6,000 talks, inspiring more than 600,000 people across 20 countries in last 10 years. He is a visiting faculty at several premier business management schools in India, including the IIMs and Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai. He has been a guest speaker at the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Boston, Dresden International University, Germany, WITS, Johannesburg, and several centers of Indian Institute of Technology in India. He is on the advisory board of MIT Pune's online education system. Amongst corporates, he has spoken at Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Samsung at their world headquarters in USA. As the author, writing books is an extension of his deep sense of responsibility towards society. He began with the monumental task of writing a series of books on Ramayana. Since then, he has written bestsellers in succession on a wide range of subjects. Apart from his book series, Ramayana, the Game of Life, he has also authored the bestseller Open-Eyed Meditations, Magic of Friendships, and many illustrated books for children. A total of about 30 books and many more in the pipeline. So let us welcome His Grace Shubha Vilas Prabhu at ISKCON Vishal Nagar by loudly chanting 3 times Hari-Bo. Hari-Bo.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Shama Sundara Radha Shama Sundara Radhe Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitya Gaura Hari-bo 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 Nitya Gaura Hari-bo Jai Srimad Paramahansa Ashtotra Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Srimad Paramahansa Ashtotra Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavad Mahapurana ki Samaved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home, text number 54. Jita-sano jita-śvāsaḥ, jita-sano jita-śvāsaḥ, pratyāhṛta-ṣaḍ-indriyaḥ, pratyāhṛta-ṣaḍ-indriyaḥ, hari-bhāvanayā dhvasta, hari-bhāvanayā dhvasta, rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ, rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ, jita-āsano jita-śvāsaḥ, pratyāhṛta-ṣaḍ-indriyaḥ, hari-bhāvanayā dhvasta, rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ. Matajis? Jita-āsanaḥ, one who has controlled the sitting posture. Jita-śvāsaḥ, one who has controlled the breathing process. Pratyāhṛta, turning back. Shad, 6. Indriyaḥ, senses. Hari, the Absolute Personality of Godhead. Bhāvanayā, absorbed in. Dhvasta, conquered. Rajaḥ, passion. Sattva, goodness. Tamaḥ, ignorance. Malaḥ, contamination. Translation. One who has controlled the sitting posture, the yogic asanas, and the breathing process can turn the senses towards the Absolute Personality of Godhead and thus become immune to the contamination of the modes of material nature, namely mundane goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The preliminary activities of the way of yoga are asana, pranayama, pratyāhṛta, dhyana, dharana, etc. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was to attain success in those preliminary actions because he was seated in a sanctified place and was concentrating upon one object, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. Thus, all his senses were being engaged in the service of the Lord. This process directly helps the devotee to get freedom from the contamination of the three modes of material nature. Even the highest mode, the material mode of goodness, is also a cause of material bondage. And what to speak of the other qualities, namely passion and ignorance? Passion and ignorance increase the material propensities of hankering for material enjoyment. And strong sense of lust provokes the accumulation of wealth and power. One who has conquered these two base mentalities and has raised himself to the platform of goodness, which is full of knowledge and morality, cannot also control the senses, namely the eyes, the tongue, the nose, the ear, and touch. But one who has surrendered himself unto the lotus feet of Lord Hari, as above mentioned, can transcend all influences of the modes of material nature and be fixed in the service of the Lord. The Bhakti Yoga process, therefore, directly applies the senses to the loving service of the Lord. This prohibits the performer from engaging in material activities. This process of turning the senses from material attachment to the loving transcendental service of the Lord is called pratyāhṛta. And the very process is called pranayam, ultimately ending in samadhi or absorption in pleasing the Supreme Lord Hari by all means. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Tam Vitam Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Shute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Very happy and grateful to be here amidst all of you all here at ISKCON Vishal Nagar. Very grateful to Karan Thakur Prabhu for having invited me here to be amongst all of you all and take your association. Today, in this particular verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we are seeing how Dhritarashtra is trying to perfect his life at the fag end of his life. Old age is a starking reality for all of us. Of course, for those who are young, they might think that old age is too far away. But for those who are old, they feel old age is like too close. But nonetheless, somewhere down the line, everyone gets old. and somewhere down the line, everyone goes through what the Dhritarashtra is going through today. So today we're going to have a solid discussion on old age, basically, but from a very analytical point of view and from a very deeper contemplative point of view, and will help us understand a lot more about ourselves, about the purpose of our lives, and about understanding the whole concept of what the Dhritarashtra is experiencing here. Okay, so please be ready for some head spin and for some very interesting understanding of life. So at every point in our life, we get different types of instructions. We get different types of understandings, lessons, and teachings. And every instruction that we hear, every lesson that we hear is applicable to us at different points in our life. And so the interesting thing about instructions is that, the interesting thing about lessons is that the lesson by itself is of no use until and unless I want to apply it to my life. So we hear a lot, right? I mean, especially in ISKCON, we hear like lectures in kilos, literally, how many lectures we hear, but how much of those lectures do we actually apply? So it's not that the person who is speaking the lecture, he is sharing knowledge, but it's not what that person tells you that is important. It is what you tell yourself that is important eventually. Right? So somebody can give you the best of best lectures and go away, but unless you talk to yourself and you decide, this I want to apply in my life, nobody can help you. Isn't it? So this body that we have is one of the greatest gifts that we can ever have. It's a great fortune to have this human form of life. In fact, the human body is called as sadhana bhavan. This body is called a sadhana dham or sadhana bhavan, where usually when you move into a new house, or like for example, you're moved into a new temple, you design the place according to your needs to ensure that all facilities are available for you all, right? For the way we use it. If something is missing, we renovate so that it's very convenient for us to reside there. So this bhavan that Krishna has given us is given for a purpose. This bhavan is given for a very specific purpose. And the person living in this bhavan, which is the soul, the atma, has a separate importance than the body. So your body is like a house. And this house, it has been made to suit your purpose. The purpose for which the house has been given to you. So if you look at the structure of the body, the way the body is created, it is very obvious why it is created like that. Like a simple thing. Most organs of our body are covered. One of the only organs that is never covered is the ears. Why is it never covered? Because the only organ that can help you, even at the time of your death, is your ears. All other organs become useless at a certain point, become redundant at a certain point. But the ears, the first organ that actually starts functioning is the ears, and the last organ that functions is the ears. So that means the way the body structure is created to facilitate good hearing. Of course, there are some people who fill their ears with garbage. Kumbhakarna. Kumbhakarna means the one who had big ears. So ideally, because he had such big ears, he could have heard most Harikatha, isn't it? He could have taken the maximum benefit of it. But his ears are so big, but he filled it up with junk. So, when we are given this body is given for a particular purpose, and this body is constantly changing. The changeability of the body itself is an indication to us. So, if you're interested in understanding this indication, it's a message for you. So, the body keeps giving us messages at different points in our life. And if there is no message that you can understand from the changeability of the body, you come to saints and Mahatmas, they will give you the message that you want to hear. You should hear, ideally. Like, for example, the moment the first white hair comes on your head, immediately it's a message. Please start taking life seriously. It's a message. But what people do, they cut that white hair, or they color it. They don't want to hear the message. It's a serious message that the body is trying to give you, but unfortunately, people are not wanting to hear that message. They dilute that message, basically. Like, for example, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find Manu, powerful king, but the moment he became old, he saw that as a message. Interestingly, the way Manu sees old age and the way Ravan sees old age are two different ways of looking at old age, basically. So Manu was a great king. He's like father of mankind, right? Though he was such a powerful king, when he became old and his physical capacity reduced, he realized this body is giving me a message. But when a person like Ravan, he has a very different take on old age. For people like him, and most people in this world are like him, right? So, for people like him, old age means being senile. Buddha, Buddha ho gaya. Means what? Satya gaya, senile ho gaya, whatever, That means that person has become irrelevant to this world. So, Ravan would tell old people, "You're old, so I'm letting you go." Whenever he would catch any person, like Ravan caught this king of Ayodhya once, much before Dasharath and Ram and all. And this person was very old. So Ravan said, "I'm letting you go." So when Angad came to Ravan's court, Ravan and Angad were having a conversation. And Ravan told Angad, "Don't you know I'm a big astrologer?" And, Ravan was cutting off his heads, right, to offer to Lord Shiva in that fire. And where usually is your destiny written? One is written in your hands, and second is written in the forehead. Obviously, we can't see our own forehead, right? But Ravan, when he cut off his head, he turned his head around and saw his forehead. He wanted to know what is in his bhagya, what is in his destiny, basically. He said, before I put it in the fire, I realized that Brahma writes destiny on people's heads, basically. So I looked in the head to see what was written for me. And what he saw in his destiny it was written that he'll be killed by a human being. And he concluded, and he said, "This is very funny." He said, what was written couldn't be true because Brahma was an old guy. And old people are just senile, So he said, it can't be true. He threw that fire, head in the fire. But he felt that's not meant for me. So this is the difference between Manu's philosophy of life and Ravan's philosophy of life. Manu takes old age as a sermon or a message for us. Instruction that needs to be implemented. But Ravan takes the message of old age as something to be made fun of. Isn't it? And if you look at the way today the world is functioning, You come to ISKCON, and right from day one of you coming and attending an ISKCON lecture, you hear old age is coming, isn't it? So sometimes we wonder why so much emphasis on old age, disease, death, right from day one of coming to ISKCON. So a lot of people feel that, what is this? Why we are so emphasizing so much on this as a message? Why not? So many people say, you're gone mad. Forget old age and all. Just enjoy life now. They make fun of this whole idea of what the message is being given, basically. So, in old age, eyesight and hearing decreases, isn't it? So, having a body means going through old age. But people are usually not wanting to experience old age, and even if they experience it in a very bad way. Like, for example, Tulsidas ji, who was such a great saint in India, one time he was bedridden due to old age. And his disciples wanted to call a doctor to treat him. So Tulsidas ji, he said, if I'm hearing less, then I don't want to hear anyway. Because hearing less is a curse for those who want to hear a lot of gossip, right? If somebody wants to hear a lot of gossip, if I am not able to hear, what happens? It's a curse. But for somebody who is interested in hearing Harikatha, for them, hearing is a boon, isn't it? So when a devotee asks for a boon, like say for example, Prithu Maharaj, when Brahma wanted to give him a boon, the one thing that Prithu wanted was, I have thousands of years so that I can hear more and more Harikatha, isn't it? But when a sinner, when somebody who's a papi, he wants a boon, he'll have, let me have thousands of years so that I can hear gossip from everywhere. I want to hear ears. Usne kya kya? Usne kya kya? I want to hear everyone's gossip, basically. So, and what about eyesight? So, eyesight is we have eyesight to see things, isn't it? And if we have still not seen enough with our eyesight, then how much more is needed to be seen? So no matter how much beautiful things you see, you always hanker for more, isn't it? So Tulsidas ji was saying that find me a doctor who does not treat my reduced eyesight and ear sight or ear hearing, but find me a doctor who finds out if my love for God has reduced. And if he can give me some medicine to increase my love for God, get me such a doctor. Tulsidas ji is saying, So, when there is weakness in the body, that weakness in the body manifests in different ways. And one of the ways in which the weakness of the body manifests is our hearing and seeing decreases. For a devotee, the purpose of hearing and seeing is what? So that he uses the ears to hear more and more Harikatha, uses the eyes to see more and more of beautiful darshans of the Lord. Now, these both can be done on an internal level also. You can hear Harikatha without actually hearing also. And because there is a very powerful process known as Smaranam. When Shravanam and Kirtanam is not possible, Smaranam is always possible. If somebody tells you you're going to office and you can't do Shravanam Kirtanam, no problem. But how can they stop you from doing Smaranam? Isn't it? If you are at a home and your parents or your spouse or anybody in your family is not allowing you to do Shravanam Kirtanam, who can stop you from doing Smaranam? Isn't it? Prahlad was in a situation where Shravanam Kirtanam technically was not possible because he was in Hiranyakashipu's kingdom. But how can Hiranyakashipu stop him from doing Smaranam? So where Shravanam Kirtanam ends, Old age is typically a time where Shravanam Kirtanam kind of starts going towards a last phase. But Smaranam can become even more powerful because you have an entire lifetime of hearing done. And in the old age, you remember everything that you have heard. So technically, that's a different type of hearing that is happening on an internal level. In the Ramayana, when Dasharath Maharaj, there's a very interesting section in the Ramayana where Dasharath Maharaj is looking at himself in the mirror in Ayodhya Kand. When Dasharath Maharaj looks at himself in the mirror, he sees one strand of white hair near his ears. And it is explained that strand of white hair near his ears was talking to him, telling him, "You are old now, retire and give your crown to Lord Ram." It's a very interesting thought, you know. Now, how can hair talk to you? Doesn't make any sense that hair is talking to you. Actually, anything can talk to you if you want to hear. Anything and anyone can talk to you if you want to hear. And if you don't want to hear, no one can talk to you. So even if somebody is giving you the best of lectures, if you don't want to hear, nothing will happen. And if somebody is not giving you any lecture at all, but if you really want to hear, the entire universe is there to give you messages. So Dasharath Maharaj, the moment he heard the white hair near his ears talking to him, he took the message very seriously. And he decided that immediately I'm going to renounce my kingdom. So if we glance at the changeable nature of this body, it is giving us instructions. When Manu became old, he also became sad. There are two types of sadness in this world. So one type of sadness is sadness that comes from lack of something. I don't have iPhone 14, I'm sad. That's one type of sadness, basically. So this is the first type of sorrow in this world, which comes from a lack of something. So, and the second type of sadness, so the first type of sadness which comes from a lack of something is known as abhavjanya dukh. Sadness that is born from lack. The second type of sorrow is, it stems from your thoughts. It's called vicharajanya. That means this sadness originates from some thoughts that you have. So many people in this world feel sorrow from what they lack. You compare yourself with somebody else, you'll start feeling sad, right? Nowadays, people go on holidays to international destinations. And after going to an international destination, they are looking at photographs of somebody else who's gone to another destination, and feeling sad. Imagine what reason people have to feel sad, So this is the first type of sadness that comes from lack of things. And that leads to hopelessness. A person feels very hopeless. But sorrow that stems from thoughts leads to hope. Like, for example, Manu, what did he not have? He had everything in life. He was a king of the world, literally. He had everything anybody could aspire for and more. But why was he sad? He had everything, but his sadness didn't originate from lack of things. His sadness originated from a thought that he had. So he thought, I have everything possible, but have I achieved the goal of my life? This thought led him to become sad. So, when we want from life, or rather we have not achieved the goal of life, he became sad. So he thought, I'm not able to renounce anything. At least I should try to become detached. So this is very inspiring, isn't it? Here Dhritarashtra, he has everything. Technically, he is still a part of the kingdom of Hastinapur. And Pandavas would have taken good care of him inside the kingdom. But Vidura realized, this is not how you should live your life. Vidura pushed him to realize that right now, you can't become sad that I lack something, but you should become sad that I have not achieved the goal of my life as yet. That is known as vicharajanya dukh. So all of us fall sick. And when we fall sick, the doctor tells us to abstain from something, isn't it? Somebody who's got diabetes, he's told, don't eat sweets. So now, if you tell a diabetes patient, don't eat sweets, does it mean the diabetes patient is developing detachment from sweets? No, absolutely not. His attachment will remain probably till the last day of his life. But we still remain attracted to them. But if you eat them, you know you're going to come closer to death, isn't it? And therefore, we slowly start detaching ourselves from them. So similarly, very few people can develop detachment just like that. Many people have to develop detachment by being told, don't be attached to this. Give up this. So when we are told give up this, it doesn't mean we have no attraction for it. People, so many devotees give up their favorite foods, tea, coffee, probably, cold coffee and chocolates. So many people give up some of their favorite foods. Kanda bhaji, And it doesn't mean that the attraction for it goes away completely. Probably till the end of your life, you might hanker for that, for some items, basically. But we give it up knowing very well that consuming this might harm my spiritual practice, might harm my connection with my goal of life. So when one realizes that I no longer want to fight to possess these things, this realization one gets in old age. Old age essentially means a message of death. It also means that it is a message that I need to eventually let go of everything that I hold very dear to my heart. At some point, I have to let go. Right? So here, Dhritarashtra is really understanding that I need to let go now. So God has made this body as a bhavan, right? I said sadhana bhavan, sadhana dham. Now, what is a bhavan without doors? Have you ever seen a house that has no door at all? Andar phas gaye. Yeah. No, absolutely not. You'll always find house means door has to be there, isn't it? Now, if you have a house and there is no door at all, it means it's a grave. When somebody is put into a grave, all doors are closed. Why? We don't want that guy to come out, isn't it? If the fellow in the grave comes out, it's a very grave situation. So the only house which doesn't have any door is a grave, basically. But this bhavan, the human body, is a house. It has a door. But this door is locked. Now, imagine if the door of your house is locked from outside. What does it mean? It means it's not a house, it's a prison. Isn't it? In a prison, have you ever found door locked inside? Prisoner is locking himself from inside, No, prisoner has no option only. There is no lock inside. You will never find a prison where prisoner has a facility of locking from inside. Somebody locks from outside and goes. Isn't it? So if a house is locked from outside and you have no facility to open the door, it means it's a prison. But if a house is locked from inside and you can open the door and go out anytime, it's a house. So this body, it's not called a prison. It's called a house. Which means that we can open it from inside and walk out anytime. It essentially means that all of us, God has given this body as a sadhana dham. That means You practice your spiritual life nicely, and you can open the door and walk out. You're not trapped inside this body. This body is not a prison where you're locked inside. This body is a house where you utilize the house in the best possible way, and when your work is done, you can move out. Every house has 4 walls, isn't it? Similarly, this house in which we are living in has 4 walls: Kala, Karma, Swabhava, and Guna. These are 4 walls of this house. And all of us, we need to utilize these 4 walls, utilize all the facilities that we have within these 4 walls, and open the door, walk out. So, of these 4, Kala and Karma are not something that is in our hand much. Kala is fixed to a great extent. Karma is already predestined in your life. You don't have too much control of what you have done in the past. But what you can use today is Swabhava and Guna. Your personal nature and your Guna, your qualities, use those two nicely and perfect your life. That's what the whole process of sadhana is. That's what the whole process of sadhana bhakti is. So, the way in which this body is designed and created by God is that there is a sense of dependence. So now there are some people who are in the mood of independence. Independence means I don't need anybody. But the reality is that all of us need somebody. In fact, we need a lot of people in our lives, isn't it? There's nobody in this world who can say, I don't need anyone. It's not possible only. The way the body is created, it is created to depend. So many debts that we have. Rishi Rina, Bhoot Rina, Pitra Rina, Deva Rina. So many debts that we have, which simply means that the body is created to depend. So, those who depend on others, the dependency could also create weaknesses and bad habits. So if I am dependent on the wrong person, I start developing the wrong habits, and the wrong mood, the wrong consciousness. But if you start depending on the right people and the right consciousness, that dependency, it actually makes us very powerful. Like for example, when Hanumanji was met Lord Ram, and he was leaving for search for Mother Sita, Hanumanji put his hand at the lotus feet of Lord Ram. Both his hands he put at the 2 feet of Lord Ram. Now when you touch somebody's feet, what happens? Automatically that person will try to pick you up, isn't it? It's like a very natural automatic thing that happens. So Ram put his hands on Hanumanji's shoulders to pick him up. Hanumanji said, my dear Lord, freeze. Let's stay like this only forever, Which means what? As long as my hands are at your feet, your hands will be on my shoulders. The moment you pick me up, my hand will be off your feet and your hand will come off my shoulders. So Hanumanji said, I want to stay in this pose only for the rest of my life. What does it really mean? So when Hanuman is putting his hand on the lotus feet of the Lord, he's showing his dependence on Ram, right? He's taking shelter of Lord Ram. And when Ram is putting his hand on Hanumanji's shoulders, what does that mean? Shoulder is a place from which you do all your actions. Whatever you do in this world, you do with your hands, isn't it? So arms are a seat of action, and arms are connected to the shoulder. So when Ram is touching the shoulder of Hanumanji to pick up Hanuman, Ram touching his shoulders means he is giving him the blessings, the ability to do things. So all our abilities comes from the Lord holding us. So Hanumanji is saying, as long as my hand are at your feet, your hands are on my shoulders. Which means, as long as we are dependent on the Lord, the Lord's grace is on our hands. Unfortunately, when we understand the idea of grace and the idea of effort, we understand it very differently. Like, for example, one of our devotees had gone to apply for a US visa. And he saw a very interesting phenomena that happened over there. So he saw that there are many people standing in line. And if you have ever gone to apply for US visa, you understand this. It's a very complicated phenomena. Nobody can guarantee you that you'll get a visa. No one. Absolutely no one can guarantee you. You have all your documents in place, still there's no guarantee you'll get US visa. It's almost like entering into kingdom of God. So this devotee was standing in the line, for the US visa. And there was one lady standing somewhere in the line in front of him. And of course, there were many people in that line. But this lady had a small baby. And this baby was crying like mad. Somehow these babies have an amplifier fitted in their system. When they cry, no sound system works. Literally, I've seen auditorium where thousands of people there in the auditorium and big sound system. I'm giving lecture. One baby cries. That's all. Nobody can hear what I'm saying, basically. Everybody looking at that baby only. And this baby was crying so madly. So, see? This is Krishna's way of, proving what I'm saying. This baby was crying so madly that immigration officer, some lady is there right in the front. She said, "You come in the front." Broke all the protocols of the line, and this lady came straight in the front with a little baby in her hand and a file in her hand. And she gave the file to the immigration officer. The whole file fell on her only. All papers fell on her. Somehow the lady gathered all the immigration papers together. And she saw all the papers. She stamped it, visa granted, go. So wanted to get her out of that place. Interestingly, she had 4 documents missing. Still she got visa. After her, one guy came next. Suit boot, very well dressed, organized file, all documents in place, visa rejected. Now this guy can't ask her why I got rejected and why she got it. That's all. No arguments, no discussion. Just go. That's all. So the point here is, all of us are in one sense trying to apply for a visa to the spiritual world. We all want to get entry into the spiritual world. So suppose you go at the entrance of the spiritual world and they ask you what documents you have. We'll say, we have all first class documents, 16 rounds, all lifelong, one document. So suppose you need entrance, like to enter into the spiritual world, you need 100 points. Okay. So this person in the entrance of the spiritual world says, 16 rounds, all lifelong. Okay, 2 points, come in. Give me another document. So unless you have 100 points, you can't come into the spiritual world. I'm just counting how many points you have. And say, okay, fine. I did book distribution all my life. Okay, fine. 2 more points. Then he says, I followed 4 regulative principles all my life. Okay, fine. 2 more points. And then he says, I did Vaishnav Seva all my life. Okay, fine. 2 more points. This fellow is thinking, will you count like this, 2 points? When will I ever come in? And then finally this fellow says, after he, whatever he could think of, all the good things he did, he told. I gave donation to temple, I took care of my family, I did this. Finally, 15, 16 points got accumulated. And then he says, at this rate, only the grace of the Lord can get me into the spiritual world. That person says, welcome to the spiritual world. That essentially means that all our documents, so everything we're doing is like putting documents in place, right? But in spite of having all the documents in place, still there is no guarantee you will get entry into the spiritual world. The entry into the spiritual world happens by the grace of the Lord only. And our efforts is like 15, 16 points. But the grace is the rest 85 points that are missing in our lives, right? So no matter how good we are, no matter how great we are, no matter how well we have utilized this body, still ultimately we depend on the grace of the Lord for perfecting our lives. And the grace of the Lord comes when there's a recommendation of some devotee. Interestingly, when Lord Ram met Shurpanaka for the first time, and Shurpanaka was talking about her family, and she was glorifying her family like anything. She talked about Ravan, how great he is, Kumbhakarna, how great he is. She talked about her own greatness. And finally she said, there is one black sheep in our family, and that is Vibhishan. He doesn't fit into only, I don't know how he is like this, And Ram said, wow. He was impressed. In the whole family of, Rakshasas, one dharmic person. That was Ram's first impression of Vibhishan. And that eventually helped him accept Vibhishan. So even a demon can recommend you. So the Lord, look at this, who recommended Vibhishan to Ram? Shurpanaka of all people, Of course, eventually Hanumanji recommended, but first recommendation came from Shurpanaka. So the idea is that we live our life in such a way that all our documents are in place. But the most important document that we should really be looking for is a recommendation of some devotee. Because that one recommendation of a devotee will supersede all our personal efforts. And that recommendation of the devotee comes not just by looking at our effort, but by looking at our attitude. Because what is more important than service is service attitude. Prabhupada always spoke about service attitude. And what is attitude? Attitude is the way you carry yourself, the way you behave, the way you deal with each other, the way you connect with each other. The advantage of ISKCON is that we have a lot of Vaishnava association. But the disadvantage is that we have a great scope of doing Vaishnava aparadha also. So many Vaishnavas, so many opportunities to do Vaishnava aparadha also. So we have to really remember that our effort is not the only thing that will get us entrance into the spiritual world. But along with our efforts, the way we connect with devotees and the attitude with which we connect with devotees makes all the difference. Hare Krishna, I'll stop here. We continue this discussion tomorrow. This is a series of 3 sessions, and hopefully we'll learn something more tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Any quick questions or comments? Great. So today evening we will have Ram Katha. Will be हिंदी में होगा शाम को. राम कथा हिंदी में करने का मजा अलग ही है. हरे कृष्ण. श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. श्रीमद् भागवत महापुराण की जय.